Roblox Assassin. I'm sure that's a name that many of you haven't heard in a while. It was a beloved game back in 2016 and 2018, but as I play it in 2022, almost 6 years later, I see a lot of people considering the game to be dead. Now, to be clear, I never really liked the term of a dying or dead game. I personally feel like a game is only dead if it no longer gets updates, which Assassin certainly does. And also, people really only look at concurrent players to dictate whether or not the game is dead, and as a content creator, I'll tell you that if you pay too much attention to numbers, you'll drive yourself crazy. And yes, the concurrent player count is steadily decreasing, and that's fine. Interests change over time. That's not even my biggest gripe about the game here. What bothers me more than anything is that not only are less people playing Assassin, but the people that do still play simply don't enjoy it. They're always complaining about how the game never updates and how old Assassin was so much better compared to what it is today. And as for myself, while I never necessarily disagreed, I could never wrap my head around why people think this way. I mean, Assassin really isn't all that different from how it used to be in 2017. And on top of that, the game gets plenty of frequent updates, right? Just this year, we got a New Year's update, a Valentine's Day event, an anniversary bundle, a 2-part Easter event, and all those updates were okay. And then it hit me. These updates were just okay. Not great, not terrible, just okay. There's many problems with Assassin in 2022, some of which are at the fault of the developer, while some of them are due to the overall community of the game. Many people these days have a pretty good idea as to why they're not enjoying the game, but they can never pinpoint the specific problems. Today, I'm going to be looking at Assassin analytically, and I'll be trying to figure out why the Assassin player base is so unhappy with the game today. I'll also be giving many suggestions to bring the game back onto its feet for both old and new players. For reference, I've been playing Assassin for over 5.5 years now, and I've been making videos on the game just a little under 5 years. Personally, I've enjoyed Assassin less and less over the years for my own very specific reasons, such as getting mass targeted in practically every server I step foot in, but I won't be touching on that in this video. That is my own problem that I'll need to deal with by myself. I'll be looking at Assassin on a larger scale, and I'll be addressing some issues that seem to affect everyone in the game. And guys, of course, let's not harass any developers over these issues. Game development is a complex task that I personally will never understand and won't ever attempt to. Everything here is simply constructive criticism. Prisman and I are on good terms, and he's told me in DMs that he's open to my feedback on the game. At any rate, buckle up because this is going to be a pretty long video. We're going to be touching on a bunch of different topics in Assassin. But before we get started, if you could drop a like on this video and subscribe for more Roblox content, I would really appreciate it. And with that out of the way, let's get started. We're going to start off with what's arguably one of the biggest issues with modern Assassin. One of the biggest complaints in the community is a lack of updates, and this is something that baffled me for quite a while because, well, we do get updates on the game, don't we? Like I said in the intro, we got a bunch of different Assassin updates this year, and it's only May. I'd say on average, we get one decently sized update per month. Sure, it's not as often as other games that have huge teams of developers and can update their game every week, but it's way more than something like Murder Mystery 2. So why are Assassin players so upset with the updates we have? And, well, I think I see the problem. When you're talking about new content for the game, I think it's important to distinguish between updates and events. Events are temporary items and content added to the game that are typically only available for a few weeks, maybe a month or two at the absolute maximum. After the event, Assassin is reverted back to how it was before. Now, when I say the word event, most people probably think of holiday events like Halloween, Christmas, and Easter, but to be honest, I think that any bundle, season battle pass, or even a competitive season can fall under the category of an event, since those are also limited time. Now, on the contrary, updates are permanent changes to the game that change how the game is played. This could include a lobby change, a new permanent case, or a new mode. New knives can be added into content updates, but they need to be permanent to the game or obtainable for at least 1 year. Now, with this separation in mind, we can say with confidence that Assassin gets a bunch of events. Can't argue with that. But permanent updates? Well, we haven't gotten any of those in ages. But anyway, let's start with criticizing the recent events since we seem to get them way more than regular content updates. We get loads of events in Assassin, especially in the recent years. We've gotten full-blown events for holidays that we've never gone before, such as Valentine's Day, Chinese New Year, and even April Fool's Day. We've also gotten a slew of season passes since the end of 2020. We're getting close to season 15 of Assassin at this rate, while MM2 is still on season 1. And all of these events are just okay. Not amazing, not terrible, just okay. To be honest, it feels like a lot of the events of Assassin have gone pretty formulaic. There's a battle pass, a competitive season, and a bundle. If it's a holiday event, we'll probably get a limited time case, and if we're lucky, a craftable dream. That's it, nothing else. Now, to be clear, there really isn't anything bad about these features. They're enjoyable and they work well. But I'll tell you this, the events back in 2017, 2018, and even in 2019 were far more unique and creative. Let's just take a look at what we've gone in the past. What happened to Halloween 2017, where we all dressed up as spooky creatures and had the task to hunt down every single one of them? And then in the new Halloween map, we had to find artifacts to get a new legendary knife. What happened to Halloween 2018, where we just got a new knife just for winning in the new map? And Easter 2017, where there were eggs hidden on every single Assassin map, and you could hunt them all down to get a legendary. That update was really cool, to be honest. I don't think there's any other events that affected all the other Assassin maps. What happened to Christmas 2019, where we had a bunch of daily missions to complete every day to get special rewards, and eventually an exclusive exotic? Even Christmas 2020, although it tragically canceled a potential live event, and I'm still disappointed about that, at least it gave us a secret crafting recipe for us to figure out together. Events in these recent years are perfectly fine on their own, but they've gotten incredibly repetitive to the point where they're all basically the same. And when you have so many seasonal passes and bundles, they all kind of just blend together, and all of these events end up feeling bland and uninspired, even if the knives in the event end up looking incredible and unique. There's a handful of mechanics from old events that we haven't seen in years. For instance, one concept we haven't seen in a while is simply having an event exotic in the elite case or the heroic case. This used to be a regular thing in Assassin, but we haven't had it in years. It's nice to keep those expensive cases fresh with some event knives. Even for relatively small holidays, it was nice to have a limited time exotic in the elite case. Remember when we randomly got Lucky Blade in the elite case for St. Patrick's Day 2018? What about Autumn Saber for Thanksgiving 2018? These holidays didn't need major events with battle passes and bundles. Sometimes a simple exotic and an expensive case was more than enough to get people excited to grind. This concept also made event knives more difficult to obtain, which might also benefit the game, but we'll talk more about that later. Unfortunately, to my knowledge, the last time we ever got an event exotic in an expensive case was in St. Patrick's Day 2019 with Gilded Luck, which was over 3 years ago at this point. Another somewhat fresh idea that we saw in some old events were collectible candies or eggs. In Easter 2018, every time someone died, they dropped an egg, and you had to run over and pick them up. We haven't had this concept for a while. In late 2020 and early 2021, it was used regularly in the form of credits, which you could spend on the battle pass or on competitive mode. However, it was here that I believe this concept ended up becoming overused. Having the credits for every single battle pass and having them necessary for competitive mode, which is a whole nother beast by itself, this made credits incredibly stale. The March 2021 update ditched credits in favor of an XP-based battle pass, which I think was a good idea, but I don't think the concept of credit should be ditched altogether. I think if used in moderation for holiday events like Easter and Halloween, this concept is incredibly effective at making the game feel fresh and new. Just don't overdo it. So here's a question to think about. Out of all the events we've seen in Assassin, which one is objectively the best? A lot of people ask me what my personal favorite event was, and I always answer Christmas 2018. I think the knives looked incredible, we got a fantastic new lobby, some really fun maps, and it even introduced some new concepts, such as limited use codes that you could put together to craft an exotic. But while this event was my personal favorite, I don't think it's objectively the best one. In fact, while this event was incredible on its own, I'd argue this is the beginning of the end. Because it feels like so many events after Christmas 2018 simply attempted to copy it rather than being its own thing. But this begs the question, which event was the best? Which one hit every single mark that makes an event diverse and fun? Viewers watching this premiere, let's play a game. I want you guys to guess in the chat which event I believe is objectively the best one. Well, I'll tell you right now that it isn't any of the modern events. Like I said, they're fine on their own, but they feel pretty repetitive over time. No fun gimmicks such as candy collection, no exotics in the elite case, just one case, a battle pass, a bundle, and maybe a crafting recipe. These cases also cost tokens rather than a separate currency, and while that does make the cases convenient to unbox, there simply isn't much grinding that goes into opening these cases. Many players simply give up a bunch of tokens they collected over time or AFK botted to get, or maybe they'll disassemble a bunch of their tier 1 exotics, and then they'll instantly get the exotics in the new case, and then they'll leave. Nothing else interests them. Like I said, it feels like these events tried to copy Christmas 2018 and end up failing. At least Christmas 2018 had multiple event cases and new maps, which is a lot more than you can say about modern events in Assassin. And speaking of which, I already said that Christmas 2018 is my personal favorite, but not objectively the best. It's got some pretty good knives and interesting mechanics, but it's missing a collectible currency and an exotic in an expensive case. That being said, this event is pretty high up there. Have you guessed the best event yet? Let's keep going. Many of you are probably guessing the 2017 events, Easter, Halloween, and Christmas. All of these are pretty solid and memorable events, though out of these three, Christmas was definitely the weakest since it didn't have a huntable legendary knife like the other two did. That being said, they're still all really good. They were really exciting, they all had special exotics in the elite case, which were great. But the big problem with these events was the lack of new knives and the lack of innovation. It was really just an exotic in the elite case and maybe a bundle. That's about it. This was perfectly fine back in 2017, but I think if an event today were to be released for a major holiday like this, I think it would be seen as disappointing and a bit lazy. That being said, this format could still work for lesser known holidays. Easter 2018 and 2019 were definitely steps in the right direction. These introduced the concept of collectible eggs that you got from killing people. Like I said earlier, credits in late 2020 made this concept a bit repetitive, but back in 2018, this was a fresh new idea. Having a completely separate currency that you needed to collect in order to open these cases not only made the game feel fresh, but it also encouraged grinding, as getting these eggs were the only way to open these cases. You couldn't AFK bot or disassemble other exotics to get them. It also made each case opening a lot more exciting, because you had to take the time to grind those eggs, making the exotic way more satisfying to get when you finally got your hands on it. These were some pretty good events, but they both had their major downsides. Let's start with 2018. While the event was fun to grind for, and there were multiple exotics to get, they were exclusive to these cases that cost eggs, which was fine, but there was no currency conversion and there was no exotic in the elite case. This meant that if you grinded to save up tokens for the event, then all of those tokens you worked for were completely useless for this event. This was pretty frustrating for players who worked hard to save up tokens, thinking that there would at least be an elite case exotic. And remember that a separate currency was a completely new concept at the time, so nobody was expecting it. Elite case exotics were the norm in this era, so that's what everyone was expecting and saving up for. On top of that, you'll notice that there aren't any major unboxing videos for this event. From what I could gather, it wasn't even possible to buy eggs with Robux. You had to grind in order to get these eggs, which is fine for most players, but for content creators who wanted to spend money to quickly pump out an unboxing video, this was really frustrating, as you were forced to grind for hours just to open a few rare baskets. Luckily, Easter 2019 addressed most of these issues by adding in a currency conversion system where you could convert your tokens into eggs. This made it so that players who saved up tokens were not completely left in the dust because they could just convert it to eggs. On top of that, YouTubers were able to make unboxing videos again, because they could buy a large amount of tokens and convert them into eggs. Unfortunately, there just wasn't much to unbox compared to previous events. While Easter 2018 had 2 exotics to unbox and 2 different cases, Easter 2019 had the fawn, and that was it. Sure, there was a bundle and competitive mode, but in terms of unboxing, it wasn't hard to get a fawn. And again, no elite case exotic. By now, I'm sure you've already guessed which Assassin event successfully blended all these elements together in a way that created a really enjoyable event for everyone who played it. After all, it was one of the most hyped and memorable events in Assassin history. And if you haven't guessed it by now, I'll tell you. The Assassin event that is objectively the greatest is none other than Halloween 2018. Halloween 2018 had everything that made for a fresh and exciting event at the time. Let's go over everything it did right. Halloween 2018 took the collectible currency from the Easter event, but instead of eggs, there were candy corns. Now, like I said earlier, this was a fresh concept that made the game exciting to play and grind. There were 2 special Halloween exotics in 2 limited time cases, each of them costing candy corn that you had to collect. However, unlike the previous event, YouTubers were not left in the dust, because there were special candy corn bundles that you could buy with Robux in order to make that juicy unboxing video. On top of that, players who saved up tokens actually had something to do, because there was a 3rd Halloween exotic in the Elite case and in the Heroic case. So even though all players still had to grind out candy corns to open the new boxes, players who saved up tokens still had something to immediately work on as soon as the event was released. It created a perfect balance by making players grind to get some exotics while rewarding players that have already saved up in advance. Halloween 2018 also introduced a new map, the Asylum, which was not only a nostalgic recreation of a 2016 map, but it also provided a fun challenge for everyone to do. If you won a round in this new map, you would get a free rare knife. So once again, this event hits the mark of having a fun map challenge that everyone can complete for a free knife. Admittedly, this challenge is a bit weaker compared to Easter 2017 and Halloween 2017, where you had to actually find things in the map rather than simply get a win, but the unique challenge was still there. And for the cherry on top, we had a craftable mythic that accumulated everything that the event had to offer. To craft the Grim Scythe, you needed an exotic from the candy corn case, the exotic from the Elite case, and the knife that was awarded to you for completing the map challenge. And keep in mind, at the time, we haven't had a craftable event knife in almost 2 years with Krampus and Christmas 2016. Everything in this event was perfectly balanced and blended together nicely, and the craftable mythic wrapped everything up in the end. This event certainly wasn't perfect. Like I said, the unique map challenge could have been a bit more engaging, and in my opinion, the knives in this event were pretty lackluster. I mean, think about it. We got a reskin of a bundle knife, a catalog item, and a reskin of that catalog item. Pretty mediocre knives, especially compared to what we were about to get 2 months later. However, despite these flaws, it shows how unique and balanced events could be. And I hope we can get more events like Halloween 2018. To clarify, I don't think all events should be like this one, because they would get just as repetitive as modern Assassin events if they all tried to imitate Halloween 2018. Not to mention, I think most Assassin players are still sick and tired of credits. And if they were brought back, Prism would have to patch those auto-collect hacks. But still, Halloween 2018 showed how creative and innovative events could be at the time. Events weren't afraid to try new things and expand upon previous innovative events, while still retaining the tried and true formula of previous events. Now, I'll give some modern events credit where it's due. Halloween 2021 gave us a really cool map, which was basically a giant Half-Life reference. I'm not sure how many Assassin players have played Half-Life, but as someone who has, this map definitely put a huge smile on my face. It also seemed that the Mythic Knife was a Half-Life reference as well. Maybe, I don't know, that might be a bit of a stretch, but I do see some resemblance. Either way, Halloween 2021 felt a bit bare bones, but it did have some good stuff going for it. Also, Valentine's Day 2022 introduced the somewhat new concept of a limited use exotic code. We got something similar to this in Christmas 2018 with the Jolly Rares, which you could eventually craft together into the Jolly Blade, but this time around the code just straight up gave you a new exotic. On top of that, this exotic was a crafting ingredient for the new Dream Knife. This felt like a fresh, exciting concept for an event that we didn't even expect, and people were looking forward to more. Sadly, the second code got bugged and the entire knife crashed and burned from there. I mean, seriously, it's a rare now, it's not even an exotic anymore. But the concept is still there, and even though it fell flat in Valentine's 2022, I really hope that Prism revisits the concept in future events. Anyway, I think that's everything I have to say in terms of the limited time Assassin events, but again, it's important to distinguish these events from actual content updates. While Assassin still gets plenty of limited time events and seasons every month or two, it's been a while since we've gotten an actual update. Like I said, updates are a bit more permanent and add some brand new features and knives to Assassin that will last at least a year. Let's play another game. People in the live chat, I want you guys to guess when the last update to Assassin was. Not a season, not a bundle, not a competitive update. Something permanent or at least semi-permanent, such as a new map, new crafting recipe, or a new case. You guys got your guesses in? Great, let's take a look. Now, I'll admit, a lot of these small updates are pretty hard to track down, but from what I could gather, the last content update was September 2021, 7 months ago. What was this update? It added in the factory map. That's it. That's the only permanent change. Okay, well, what was the last update before that? June 2021, almost 11 months ago. This added in the castle map. And to make it worse, this map was already removed from the game, so this update was basically reverted. Alright, let's forget the map updates. When was the last time we got some new knives into the game? Got your guesses in? Let's take a look. Well, I suppose you could count the summer 2021 event for adding in Vortex, but honestly, since that was released with the summer update, I feel it was a bit overshadowed by the event, and not to mention, that was only one permanent knife. Let's find an update or a quick series of small updates that added permanent new knives. From what I could gather, the last update that added permanent new knives was May 2021, over a year ago. There were a few small updates that added the Toxic Battle Axe and Wendigo crafting recipes. Definitely nice updates for sure, but nothing huge. I'd say that the last big update for Assassin was in March 2021, known as the first revival update. Unpopular opinion here, but I actually think this was one of the worst Assassin updates we've had, but we'll talk more about that later. The point is, yes, we're getting a lot of events, but the amount of regular, normal updates is severely lagging. We rarely get permanent updates that add new knives just for the hell of it. Who remembers May 2017, where we got Case 5, a new craftable exotic, and a slew of new elemental mythics, just for the hell of it? And then a few months later, we got a new dream tier above mythics, just because. Who remembers early 2019, where we got the Elegant Saber and the Rainbow Saber, and everyone was super hyped over them? 2020 released Assassin Royale, a huge mode that changed how we played the game. Remember early 2017, where we got a new UI, a new lobby, some new maps, a mythic in the Elite case, which was a new concept at the time, a new case, and a bunch of craftable mythics, some of them even being hidden recipes that we had to figure out. Remember summer 2018, where we got a complete redesign of the game and all of its visuals, new bonus rounds, a new lobby, new VIP prizes, new Elite case exotics and craftable mythics and dreams, a new pro mode outside of competitive seasons, and a new generation of competitive prizes. All of that just in one summer update. It feels like we're never going to get a massive summer update like that again, unless it's Assassin 2. If we get Assassin 2. And it's this realization that made me understand why people feel like Assassin never updates. It feels like it's falling under the same trap as Murder Mystery 2, where it only updates once certain holidays roll around, or once it's been a month, so we have to have a new season. Granted, Assassin seems to celebrate way more holidays than Murder Mystery 2, but it's still only updating because it feels obligated to do so for the holiday, or simply because it's been a while, rather than creating a meaningful content update. Case 8 was released in early September of 2020, almost 2 years ago. Where's Case 9? Where are the new clan prizes? I feel like we should be getting new ones every few months, 6 months at most. Crafting recipes like Elegant Saber, Flamethrower, Steampunk, and many other recipes can probably be rotated out for something else by now. How about some new maps or a new lobby? A revamp to Assassin Royale has been promised for over a year and we have yet to get it. We've also been promised to get bonus rounds back in VIP servers, which is also something that never happened. I don't know about you guys, but I would much rather get a big permanent summer update every year than just small limited time summer events. I'm not saying that every single update has to be like summer 2018 or February 2017, but it would be nice to see some things that spice up the Assassin formula or change how we see the game. In any case, that's all I've got in terms of updates and content. Let's take a look at some other big issues with Assassin and see how they can be solved. Okay, I promise his subtitle is going to make sense, just let me build to that point. Not every issue is at the fault of the developer. Some issues arise due to certain players or their play styles. This point is going to address the competitive community that dominates modern Assassin. Because of a variety of reasons, many casual players have left Assassin and moved on to other games, leaving the competitive side of the community to end up becoming the majority, for better or for worse. Honestly, a lot of these players don't even bother with the game unless competitive mode comes out, and they probably just sell their leaderboard prize anyway. Now let me tell you, I could make a whole separate rant video on the state of competitive mode because it is an absolute dumpster fire. But to keep things brief, here are just a few issues that you'll encounter when playing competitive mode. Naturally, many competitive players are going to develop strategies that will give them the most amount of wins or competitive points. After all, competitive points are what's needed to get on the leaderboard and win those expensive knives. And it seems we've reached the peak of the Assassin meta, and we have discovered the best way to constantly win. What's this golden strategy, you may ask? Camping and peeking. Yep, that's it. Staying in one spot and occasionally peeking out from behind a wall to throw a knife to snipe someone before immediately retreating to safety. If you're in your own safe spot, then nobody can hurt you. There's no possible way for you to lose. No confrontations, no fun battles. If you're lucky and you're one of the last two standing, you might have a gentleman's agreement with your opponent to have an open 1v1. But other than that, you need to stay in your own place to even dream of winning. Walk around anywhere and you'll likely get sniped from across the map from someone you can't even see. This is Assassin's modern meta, and I absolutely despise it. It blows my mind how such an exciting, fast-paced game can be turned into something so slow and tedious. Assassin has gone from quick, brief rounds lasting no more than a minute to 3 minutes of players just standing around, never fighting. It's the most grueling gameplay you can experience, especially for a game like this where it's meant to be fast. With this evolving meta, it's no wonder why so many players left, and those that stuck around are so bored out of their mind while grinding. The same problem can be seen in Royale mode. I mean, I literally remember making a video all about camping in that mode. While there fortunately aren't too many exploiters plaguing Royale at the moment, you've still got a slew of campers up in Castle Keep, sniping others from below. Players won't even approach each other until the storm forces them to 10 minutes later. And the worst part about all this is, it works. It's optimal. As someone who has grinded a handful of competitive leaderboards, I can personally say that I've gotten way better results when I started camping and peeking. And most of the Royale wins I got from camping in Castle Keep. As boring as it was for everybody involved, myself included, it definitely gave me a lot of success as a player. Now, to be fair, when a round ends due to the time running out, the person with the most amount of kills will take the win. So in some sense, the game does encourage you to go out there and get some kills. But the thing is, at the beginning of the round, you can get so many different kills just from peeking depending on where you are in the map. And those kills will give you an opportunity to avoid other survivors for several minutes until the time inevitably runs out and you can get the win. I'm going to use an analogy to describe the current state of Assassin's meta. I'm going to talk about a game I'm sure a handful of you know, which is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. There's a lot of fighters in this roster, and many of them are looked down upon for being cheap and tedious projectile spammers. But out of all these characters, when it comes to the competitive meta, no character is hated more than Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, why is Sonic hated so much competitively? After all, Sonic doesn't really have any annoying projectiles in his arsenal. In fact, Sonic is actually a very fast-paced and exciting character that can rush his opponent and have thrilling fights. Sound familiar? Well, the problem with Sonic is because he runs so fast, he's able to run away from his opponents and dodge all of their attacks. In a competitive match, a round of Smash Bros will typically last 8 minutes. If the time runs out, the player with the most amount of lives left, or with the least amount of damage taken, ends up winning the game. As a result, many Sonic players will run in, land maybe a hit or two on their opponent, and then simply run away from their opponent until the time runs out. No fighting, just dodging and stalling. Again, doesn't this sound familiar? This is a sentence I never thought I'd say, and I'm probably going to be quoted and memed to hell and back for this, but I believe that Sonic the Hedgehog is an accurate representation of modern Assassin gameplay. It's designed to be quick, fast-paced, and full of action and combat. But unfortunately, many players have discovered that it's simply more optimal to run away, avoid your opponent for as long as possible, and simply wait for the time to slowly run out, just for the sake of getting the win. Nobody likes fighting Sonic, and nobody likes playing as Sonic. It's boring for the players, and it's boring for the viewers watching. It's nothing but an optimal strategy for players to compete and succeed. Now, to be clear, I can't really blame players for doing this. After all, they're simply doing what gets them the most success. Telling an Assassin player to stop peeking would be like telling a Fortnite player to stop building. They made an entirely separate mode for that, but that's beside the point. The point is, it's fruitless to just tell someone to stop camping, and bullying players that do camp only spreads more toxicity, so we don't want to do that. However, I do believe that there can be a few updates that change the game in such a way to discourage camping. For Assassin Royale, you could definitely get creative with the solution. The storm is a good tool to eventually bring players closer together, but people are still going to camp for as long as possible. Prisman should come up with a fun gimmick to get people moving around in the map. For example, at random points, a nuke could drop at a random map that will kill everybody that's in that map. This will force players to retreat from that map and walk somewhere else. Or you could grab special power-ups in one section of the map so that players will swarm to that place in order to grab some power-ups for themselves. Or better yet, you could just spawn power-ups all over the map for players to grab. One of the main reasons people don't camp as much in Fortnite is because they want to loot the areas for weapons and materials. Having power-ups all around the map for players to loot would not only make Assassin Royale more interesting, but it could discourage players from camping. These aren't perfect solutions, to be honest, but I'm just throwing out some creative ideas for Prisman to consider. Now, as for classic mode, and most importantly competitive mode, there's a bit less room for creative solutions for camping, but there is a practical one nonetheless. I think the main reason that people camp and peek is simply because they want to win. In a round of competitive mode, there's a maximum of 10 comp points that you can grab. And out of those 10 available points, you can get 3 of them simply by winning. For example, if you only kill 2 out of your 7 opponents, but you end up winning, you actually end up nabbing half of the competitive points in that round. It's no wonder that players prioritize that huge bonus over fun gameplay. So I think the solution to camping in competitive mode is pretty simple. Why not just completely remove the points that you get for winning? Seriously, I know that sounds weird at first, but think about it. All that this win bonus does is give players a motivation to camp until the very end to grab that big chunk of points. Winning is by no means unimportant to Assassin, but I think that killing a variety of different players shows that you're far more skilled. By removing this win bonus, players will actually want to hunt each other down in order to nab as many points as possible. You could still camp if you wanted to, but then you're potentially giving up kills and competitive points to other players that are seeking them. Would people get comp points more slowly? Absolutely. But if every player is getting points more slowly, is the leaderboard really going to change all that much? It would simply change the competitive meta to encourage aggressive play styles and exciting battles. Removing win points sounds like a weird idea at first, but I think it would be incredibly beneficial for players. Now, I've already made a rant video on overpay values in the past, so if you want full details on this issue, you can go ahead and watch that video. This section will more or less be a follow-up on that video and the issues I've mentioned. In short, it's gotten worse. Overpay values haven't diminished. In fact, it's probably what people primarily use in the trading community. Now, like I've stated earlier, the term doesn't really make much sense. Overpay is a concept that can't be given a specific value. But the big problem with overpay values is just how decentralized everything is. The only way to get a hold of these overpay values is either by word of mouth from other people, who may or may not deceive you, or just use your own judgment. There's no value list or guide that you can go off when making these decisions. And if you dare to use the centralized base value, known as Zikoi's value list, you're gonna end up making a lot of bad trades. Even if there were true overpay values, someone could very easily lie about said values to give themselves a better trade. I mean, we've done a whole series on that very concept. But the difference is, when it comes to overpay values, you can't necessarily prove or disprove of someone doing this due to the lack of centralization. This leaves the assassin trading community in a massive web of confusion, giving people a lot of difficulty trading knives. If you're a new player who just started on building your inventory, it's practically impossible for you to get your foot in the door of the trading community. This, in turn, pushes new players away from playing Assassin. Even for myself, I can't be bothered to make trades in this game anymore because of how confusing it is. With every somewhat reasonable base trade I make, there'll be some overpay trader telling me how trash my trade is. At this point, there's no stopping OP traders. They practically dominate the trading community, and they're here to stay. So instead, I'm going to suggest a solution that's a bit more practical than my previous rant video. People who OP trade. Why not just make your own value list? No, seriously, why not? Now, in my previous rant video, I took a look at an overpay value list, and I clowned on it for quite a bit. My opinion on this value list still hold true, but not because of the values themselves, but simply because of the terminology it used. Like I said, overpay is a concept, not a value. You can't simply put a number on overpay. That would just be increased value. And by making an overpay value list, you're implying that you're making values based off of Zikoi's value list and inflating those values to your liking. I mean, the fact that they kept Zikoi's values in a completely different section of the list just proves my point. That's not overpay. You're just disagreeing with Zikoi's values, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I don't think anyone should be constantly agreeing with him. But that being said, if you're going to completely disagree, why not just separate from Zikoi's value list entirely? You can keep your values without Zikoi's list and without using the confusing term of overpay. Ditch the term of overpay. Bring together the current, biggest, and most active knife traders in the assassin community and collaborate together to create a brand new list completely separate from Zikoi's. This makes the trading community far more unionized and centralized. Players won't need to only talk to Zikoi to have a value change, and it allows newer players to get into the trading community, leading to more active trading and a more active game overall. Murder Mystery 2 did this exact thing with the Supreme value list. When the MM2 values value list updated so infrequently and people started to disagree with that list, they just went ahead and made their own. And while players in MM2 typically will choose one list over the other, leading to some division in the community, it's still a trading community that's a lot easier to follow along with, even if some items do have drastically different values between the two lists. With the sheer amount of people that disagree with Zikoi and his value list, I'm surprised this hasn't been done already. I don't know why so many people act like Zikoi's value list is some all-powerful official value list that everyone needs to riff off of just because he's an admin for the game. Zikoi made this value list long before he was ever appointed as an admin, and his list is just as unofficial and subjective as any value list the community could make. Just like how base values aren't any more accurate than overpay values. They're just the same concept but with different numbers. The only difference is, one of them is centralized and made a value list. So if you're gonna disagree with Zikoi's and make your own values, then stop pretending like you won't. Another value list could really help Assassin. I wasn't quite sure where to put this point, as it doesn't really correlate with the rest of what I have to say, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the exploits that are in Assassin. In recent years, we've had so many waves of auto-kill exploits that basically make the game unplayable. I can think of 2 instances in the past year where Assassin was completely unplayable due to this. Prisman will eventually patch these exploits if the game reaches that unplayable status, but by then, the damage has already been done to the community. It needs to be done a lot more often. Now luckily, when it comes to auto-killers, competitive mode is somewhat immune to them. Yes, people will auto-kill on there for a while, but the active moderation during competitive seasons makes them get banned rather quickly. You can't say that about the other modes though, or even the clan seasons. There have been many instances where the clan leaderboards were overrun by exploiters with little to no moderation in that department. This is why I personally shut down my own clan indefinitely until further notice. I simply cannot run an assassin clan until I know for sure that the issue is addressed. At the time of this recording, there aren't too many auto killers, but I'm still terrified of a potential third wave. And that's only one type of exploit, which arguably isn't the worst. Yes, auto killers can make the game unplayable, but at least you know for certain when someone is exploiting. You report them, and that's it. But there are other sneaky exploits that many players use to give themselves an advantage without looking like an obvious hacker. There's the silent aim exploit, which is basically just aimbot. There's hitbox extension exploits. the name speaks for itself there, and I believe there's some exploits that let you see through walls. But the most popular of these exploits is definitely silent aim. Now, this is something I briefly mentioned in my wonderful list of things wrong with competitive mode, but since these hacks aren't so obvious to spot, a lot of players use them in comp mode. While auto-killing does hurt the game significantly, silent aim is definitely a different beast that's detrimental to the community. Silent aim has the ability to turn its community against each other. People point fingers left and right about who is or isn't hacking the game. Innocent people get punished, while some players using silent aim end up winning the leaderboard completely scot-free. It's great that auto-killing is being addressed, but these silent aim exploits need to be patched for good. Even if everyone vowed to never use silent aim ever again, and everybody kept that promise, the mere existence of it is a threat to the community as players turn against each other. Having silent aim patched can give players and moderators peace of mind that competitive mode is fair for everyone. Nostalgia is a powerful emotion that can make you feel a handful of different things. And in many cases, people will look at a nostalgic time with rose-tinted glasses and believe that it was absolutely perfect. And in many cases, nostalgia can be used as a tool to give your game more popularity. But unfortunately, nostalgia only lasts for a small period of time. A Gilded Age is a time where things are portrayed to be perfect when they really aren't. And this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I believe that the Gilded Age of Assassin was in 2017. For years now, people have been begging for Assassin to go back to 2017. If Assassin went back to how it used to be, all of its problems would magically go away. To be honest, 2017 isn't as good as people say it is. Sure, it had more players and more updates, both of which being especially nice, but the game itself hasn't really changed much since then. I can almost guarantee you that if Assassin stopped updating in mid-2017, there'd probably be less than 20 concurrent players. Yet people still sit there and hope for 2017 Assassin to come back, even though we know for a fact that bringing back 2017 Assassin would not work. And how do we know this? Well, to be honest, it's kinda already happened. One of the biggest updates, and probably the only big update that we've had in recent years, was the March 2021 update. This update was a true return to form for the original Assassin of 2017. It brought back the nostalgic city lobby, removed most of the newer maps in favor of some remastered originals, and stripped down the gameplay to make it feel more like that original Assassin. And to be completely honest, I think that the March 2021 update ended up being one of the worst updates in Roblox Assassin. Sure, at the time of its release, everybody loved it, myself included. Like I said, nostalgia works wonderfully until it doesn't. It was a great update in the short run, but in the long run, it was detrimental to the game. This update did a few good things. It allowed you to open cases with tokens again, which, okay, that feature shouldn't have been removed to begin with. It brought back the point prizes in competitive mode, which, again, shouldn't have been removed to begin with. It brought back the old paintball. I like both versions, to be honest. I'm a bit neutral on this one, but I understand the change. It made Ruins visually better, but mechanically worse. And it added new VIP knives and clan prizes. Those last few additions are really the only good things. But when you look back at this update, the amount of content that was cut from Assassin for the sake of nostalgia is nothing short of sad. This update removed 3 whole maps with absolutely nothing new to replace them. And worst of all, this update completely removed special rounds. Yep, one of the few things in Assassin that made it not repetitive, removed for nostalgia. To be fair, Assassin felt repetitive to many even while these bonus rounds were in the game, solely because of how few there are. But even so, was it really necessary to completely remove them from all modes? You could have at least kept them in classic mode and just removed party mode. And speaking of modes, deathmatch got removed too. The only special mode that survived this purge was free play mode, which, I mean, okay, I'm not gonna complain. It's a nice change of pace, it's good for practice, and there's some fun power-ups. But I'm curious why Prisman decided to keep this game mode out of all the other ones. If anything, it would have made more sense to keep Deathmatch, because that's the mode that was also in 2017 Assassin. Royale mode also remained as well, which, yeah, that's kind of a given. It's a huge map, all the devs worked super hard on it. Of course they weren't going to remove it in less than a year after it launched. But the point is, all of these fun, new ways to play got completely canned. Prisman promised to at least bring these rounds back to private servers, which still wouldn't have been ideal. I think they should be in public servers too, but at least it would have been something. But it's been over a year and Prisman hasn't done that either. This is something that's always baffled me, because even though people did want 2017 Assassin back, I can't think of too many people who actually wanted bonus rounds completely gone. I think the only people who ever complained about them were the clan grinders, because you couldn't get clan points out of most bonus rounds. In which case, the easy solution is to just add clan points to those bonus rounds. If anything, Assassin probably would have benefited from even more special rounds. I know a lot of people who've always wanted a 4v4 mode. Another idea is double assassin, where each player has 2 targets and 2 assassins. Prisman could also get ideas from other games such as Framed and add in the hunted man mode, where the entire server has 1 target. The point is, this update just removed so much. Bonus rounds are gone, deathmatch is gone, most of the maps are gone, daily missions are now only shown on the board instead of a separate UI button, which, why? That's so less convenient. I almost got to a streak of 500. Do you know how annoying it is to have to walk over to this board to check your missions every single time and to open my daily cases, when I could just press a button before? Oh, but 2017 Assassin had nothing but a mission board, so we have to keep that. You can just have both. And yes, I know this is a really small, nitpicky problem, but it just proves my point. The game was made objectively worse and more tedious because that's what people remember. And again, this was fine at the time because it was so nostalgic. But now I just look back at this update and it screams, hey, remember this? Remember the constant city lobbies? Remember these maps? Remember when cases behaved normally? Remember the... and the... Do you remember all that? Maybe if Prisman updated the game a bit more and changed some things, this update would still be a pretty good one. But as it stands, given how this was the final major permanent Assassin update, I think it ended on a low note. The March 2021 update not only removed most of the good content, but it showed us that the game was too scared to innovate. It was stuck with using nostalgia to desperately attempt to attract an old audience that probably grew out of the game years ago, rather than trying to switch up things to discover a new audience, a new generation of Assassin players. And it also showed us that trying to go back to 2017 Assassin isn't going to work. The game is probably as close to 2017 as it's going to get, and people are still very unhappy with it. This one's honestly a pretty quick point, and it's something I've said a handful of times. With the competitive side of the game taking up most of the community, it's difficult for casual players to really get into the game. Even without camping, players overall are a lot more skilled, which certainly isn't a bad thing, but you can't deny that many casual players are going to find it too difficult, and won't even try playing the game. Prisman tried to encourage more people to go into pro mode by increasing the rewards, but I don't think that changed much in the long run. But the only seriously bad part about it is the toxicity in the community. Again, I've said this many times before, but imagine being a kid, trying out Assassin for the first time, and one of the first things you see are people just being toxic to each other, calling each other trash, accusing each other of exploiting, bypassing the chat filter. It's no wonder why there's hardly any new players in such an environment. Sadly, there aren't too many solutions to these problems. Prisman could increase the pro mode rewards even more, but it gets to a point where pro mode will be incredibly overpowered. Luckily, I feel like most of the toxicity nowadays is contained in competitive mode, So if you don't want new players to see that, you could just increase the level requirement to enter. That's another good reason to do so, on top of the issue of exploiters and mass boosters. But ultimately, it's really up to the community to spread less negativity. I don't know what I could personally say that already hasn't been said, so I'm just gonna leave it at that, but I don't know, just respect other players, man. Even though the gameplay aspect of Assassin seems too difficult for new players, I feel like there's another aspect that feels a bit too easy for experienced players, and that's getting some of the knives. There's another reason that modern Assassin events feel bland and mediocre, and I wanted to save that reason for this section. People tend to brush off modern Assassin events because the knives just aren't worth much. Seriously, pretty much all the knives in recent events end up being worth 2 exotics, maybe 3 at most. And for many players with pretty good inventories, why would they bother with the event? They're out here grinding for Cybershot. You think they care about Cupid's sword? Unless you're a brand new player who desperately needs an exotic, you'll typically just brush off what's in the season pass or in the case. And it's a shame too, because Assassin knives in recent years have been some of the coolest and most creative exotics we've ever seen in the game. I know Evaeus was a great knife developer in his own right, but I don't think people give the current knife developers enough credit. A rolling pin, popsicles, a cheeseburger knife, chalk rims, tridents, scepters, spheres, tessins, a keyboard, so many different types of weapons that are basically never seen in a knife game. But hey, they never make it past 5 values, so who cares? They're trash. And I'm not saying that's a good mindset for people to have, but it's reasonable that the knives feel a bit too easy for experienced players. I remember when Autumn Saber came out in the Elite case and the Heroic case, everyone was scrambling to get it. And it was only available for such a short amount of time that many people weren't successful. And that hype train never completely died. Autumn Saber never really went down in value all that much, and it's still a really good exotic today. This is something that the newer events just don't do. Very rarely we'll see some hype knives that have potential, such as Vortex and Cake Pop, but most of them end up not living to that hype. Going back to what I said near the beginning of this video, this is another good reason to bring back some event exotics into the more expensive cases. They can be difficult to get, which makes things more exciting for both old and new players. And even outside of events, releasing knives that are really difficult to craft is exciting for everyone, even if not everyone watching is going to be able to get that knife. Remember May of 2017 when Prisman released the Elemental Mythics? You needed 3 wind elementals, 3 of them, just to craft the fire elemental. And then in July 2017, the Dreamwalker was incredibly difficult to craft at the time. Now, some of the later crafting recipes like Toxic Battle Axe, Wendigo, and Dark Commander are definitely tricky, but I'd like to see even a bigger challenge. Something harder than Dreamwalker or Wendigo or Dark Commander. Normal tier 1 exotics also feel a lot easier to get, probably because of the time shop. The fact that players can just grind coins to buy an exotic rather than unbox one from the Elite case, it definitely removes a lot of the challenge from the game. Honestly, I think the time shop has to go. It was an okay feature, but most players agree that it's way more exciting to unbox things. Overall, while the gameplay seems to cater towards the competitive audience, I feel like most recent knives try to cater towards the casual audience by making exotics more accessible. And I feel like it should be the opposite. Back in 2017, I saw people struggle just to even get one exotic. But regardless of how frustrating it was, they still had the determination to see it through. And it felt so satisfying to them when their work paid off. And think of games like Murder Mystery 2, where it's so hard to get your foot in the door to get your first godly without paying Robux. I'm not saying that Assassin should become some kind of pay-to-win game, but give your players a challenge. Newer knives need to be less accessible and more valuable for them to be exciting. The competitive community has made a lot of update requests to benefit their own competitive play, many of which have been at the expense of the casual audience. For example, a lot of the fun maps, such as Prisworld in 2020, ended up getting shot down because of how gimmicky the map was. It had spinning teacups, a Ferris wheel, spleef, basically the most casual map you could imagine. People complained that it was too gimmicky for competitive mode and the entire map was removed. Granted, this map was also pretty laggy, so this wasn't a completely invalid move, but I feel like there's a handful of other instances where competitive players hated on a map for it to be removed. And Prizworld is one of the biggest examples. A lot of people have joked around saying that competitive players would only enjoy a completely empty base play with nothing else. Which was funny for a while, but given the evolving meta of camping and peeking, I'm starting to want this map more and more each day. Now, I'm not saying the competitive community should be forced to play in maps that they don't like. I can easily see their complaints. It's really hard to hit players on those teacups. But why not just remove certain maps in competitive mode only? I remember when competitive mode first came out, and it removed so many features that classic mode had, such as pets, radios, trading, and chatting. Nowadays, the modes feel pretty much identical gameplay wise. Now, I'm not saying that all of these features should be removed again, but the point is, if only a few select maps are competitively viable and enjoyable, why not restrict competitive mode to those few maps and let the casual players enjoy a wider variety? Another good example of the casual audience being swept aside is the removal of R15. When Royale dropped, you could choose between R6 and R15 avatars, but competitive players complained about this and it was removed shortly after. Many competitive players argued that R15 avatars seriously hurt the assassin meta. Now I'm gonna be honest, this one's a lot more opinionated. I haven't grinded top 10 or taken Assassin seriously in a long time, but does someone using an R15 avatar seriously hurt the Assassin gameplay that much? Like, is it really that much of a game changer? Because not only do you personally have the option to switch to R6, but there's a show hitboxes option that allows players to see the hitboxes of their opponents. So even with those wacky R15 animations, you could see where you need to aim. From my personal experience, R15 avatars might have changed the gameplay very slightly, but it was so slight to the point where I could never notice it. And if it was really that drastic of a change, then Prisman could just go into the game and fix that, rather than remove the option altogether. I know that not everyone likes it, but a lot of casual players, they really like R15. R15 and its variety of animations is a good way for players to be able to express themselves more and enjoy the games that they play. Yet it was removed because of a very slight difference in gameplay. Murder Mystery 2 suffers from the same issue, but the complete opposite. That game forces R15 and doesn't have R6. I feel like it limits avatar customization just as much. Why not just have both? These changes show that Prisman appeals to his competitive audience while pushing aside the casual audience. And while it's great to listen to feedback and make changes accordingly, there's a few issues with this approach. The thing is, in Assassin's current state, most of the casual community has left. The majority of the feedback Prisman receives is from the more niched competitive side that is stuck with the game. And don't get me wrong, that audience absolutely should be listened to. Their opinion is important. However, I feel like it's also important to consider what would attract players. In the grand scheme of Assassin's overall player base, casual players can almost be seen as a silent majority. I think that Prisman needs to focus more on this casual audience when it comes to content in the game. Not to mention, Assassin's peak in popularity was when it appealed to this audience. I don't think there should be any updates that hurt the competitive community. However, I think that more compromises should be found for issues like maps and R15. And any big changes that the competitive community wants should be prioritized in competitive mode and maybe pro mode. Many Assassin players, while being unhappy with the game, can never put their finger on the exact core problem with the state of the game. By looking at all the topics we've seen today, from the repetitive events to the incredibly easy event exotics, to a massive update that hurt the game solely for nostalgia and the lack of meaningful updates afterwards, I think we can put that all into one core problem. Assassin is playing it too safe. Nowadays, it seems that Prisman only drops updates that he knows will work or have worked in the past. Events have gotten repetitive because Prisman is constantly over and over again using a system that has received positive feedback. He keeps recycling the same gimmicks rather than trying to come up with something new. When people demanded that we got 2017 Assassin back, that's what we got, and lost a slew of content in the process. And there's been few updates since then, because how many updates can you make without losing the feel of old Assassin? What updates can be made that won't send the community into an uproar missing the good old days? And even more content was stripped down due to it being competitively unfair. What updates can be made that won't aggravate the competitive community in some way? It feels like the community is also playing it too safe as well, figuratively and literally. On top of the constant camping and peeking from the competitive community, it feels like a lot of players are too afraid of change. To me, it feels like a lot of the new ideas and maps are overly criticized on day one rather than being given a fair chance. Prisman is constantly listening to the small amount of fans still playing the game instead of experimenting with new concepts and ideas. And again, don't get me wrong, it's great that Prisman listens to these people. I'm not saying that Prisman shouldn't listen to his player base. We all know a certain someone who hasn't been listening recently, and needless to say, it hasn't gone well for them. But when you're creating content of any kind, there needs to be some kind of balance between old and new things so that the content doesn't get repetitive. Recently, Minitoon, the developer of Piggy, made a Twitter reply that sums up what I'm trying to say here. At some point, I need to stop listening to fans and trust myself on my own decisions. If I were to only listen to fans, I would just be making more chapters bi-weekly, with very little innovation in terms of gameplay whatsoever. This is the trap that Prisman has put himself into. He no longer trusts himself with innovating the game, and only implements what he knows will work until it all runs dry. Compare these past couple years to 2020, which is probably the most innovative year for the game. 2020 Assassin definitely wasn't perfect either. This starting screen was way too overwhelming for any new player to handle, but at least it was trying to be something different. At least it was adding new content to spice up the gameplay and attract new people. I mean, just look at Royale mode. This is new, this was fresh, this was exciting. Campers ended up making this a tedious experience, so it definitely needs work, but the concept is there. The Portals app. Definitely against the Roblox terms of service in many different ways, but man was it cool for those couple months. Even the time shop, let's be honest, this probably wasn't a good idea, but I respect the attempt. At least Prisman tried something, which is more than you can say about the past year. It's that sudden innovation from the game that I miss most of all. I don't know if the overall negative feedback of these ideas from fans and from Roblox ended up discouraging Prisman from further experimentation, but all I can say is, don't give up. This game is only going to suffer more if there's constant repetition. Make these new ideas and then listen to feedback on what fans think. I believe that Assassin can get better, but it's gonna need to be pretty different from what it is today. It cannot cling onto those 2017 days that everybody seems to desperately want. It needs to expand what we've seen in previous years and introduce even newer ideas on top of what we've already seen. I don't know if that's going to happen in some kind of summer update or if we need to wait for Assassin 2, but something needs to change. No matter how hard we try, Roblox Assassin will never be the same from what it used to be. But maybe it shouldn't. Stop playing it safe. And that's my 2 cents on the whole thing. For those of you guys who seriously watched all the way until the end, I cannot thank you enough. This is something I kind of wanted to get off my chest because, I mean, this is the big talking point in the Assassin community right now. So I feel like I had to put in my own thoughts into it. And I know it's going to be some pretty different opinions from other people. But let me know what you guys think. Comment down below. Give me your guys' opinions. You guys in the live chat, you can probably talk for a few more minutes, but the chat shuts down eventually, so you guys can talk for a little bit. But really, put your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let's get a discussion going. Let's suggest some new ideas, because that is what Assassin needs now more than anything. And again, for those of you guys who are actually stuck all the way through this big video, I can't thank you guys enough. Like, this was a crazy video. Literally, the script was 20 pages. I kid you not. So it was pretty insane. So thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have seriously given me so much support over the years, and I cannot thank you enough for what you guys have given me. To be able to make a video like this and have people listen, that just means a lot to me. So with all that, I'll go ahead and see you guys in the next video. Stay purple.